Clap sync. 3, 2, 1.
That was good.
Amazing.
That was a real good one.
Yeah, I think that'll get done what we need to get done. Do what it need to get done. Done did the thing that did need to be done.
It's been a week.
Hey, that's an intro. Hey, welcome back to the podcast, everybody.
It's been a while.
This is the 36% with Brett and Adam, in case you forgot. I'm Brett.
And I'm Adam.
And we apologize for not having a podcast to you. Fresh back from Thanksgiving. It's been an entire week of news.
Oh my God.
There's been so much happening this week. We're going to start off with, finally, the last time we ever have to talk about the 2018 midterm elections, which I'm pretty sure we said last week. But now
I
it's
have guarantee
officially
we did.
official last week.
There
Maybe,
we go.
Probably. Whomst really knows. We're talking about that. We're going to talk about some fun Missouri stuff.
Yeah.
Some Claire McCaskill stuff. Some St. Louis police stuff. So, your average stuff.
Yeah, the huge.
Yeah. And then we're going to get into a little bit of international news, some national news, some headlines.
Lots of national news.
And the second half of this podcast is going to be all about your new Congress.
Hell yeah.
And how the
one that
president's
you
son's
elected,
going to
everyone.
jail. So it's going to be a lot.
That's going to be a lot.
A lot to get into.
So, without further ado,
yeah, let's get into it.
let's get into it. The election finally was decided.
Yeah.
Because they had a special Senate election down in Mississippi, in which they had a four-way run, and then initially Mike Espy and Cindy Hyde-Smith were the two that were got the most votes, and so they went into a runoff.
Correct.
So this was not about to be a contested seat, and largely in the election it turned out to be way closer than anticipated, basically because Cindy Hyde-Smith is a Confederate sympathizer.
Yeah, that one was kind of shocking.
Yeah, so to just briefly go into some stuff, because this is
shocking,
some
I don't
old
know.
news
It's
now.
kind of
I'm not sure
on-brand.
how shocking that is. She has a history of defending and sympathizing with the Confederate States of America.
Yeah.
Being from Mississippi, it's kind of on your state flag.
Yeah.
But just to go with some things, especially during the campaign, she advocated for voter suppression and to make it harder for, as she called them, college-educated liberals to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, on that note, she also said during one of her campaign speeches that she liked one of these constituents in this district so much that she would attend a front row. She would be on the front row of a hanging with him.
Yeah, it was a very strange hypothetical.
Was it? I think did she call it a lynching?
She might have.
I
if
think
not,
so.
I mean, definitely she called it a public hanging.
That's what
whether
she
or
meant.
not she
I think that's
specified
probably
a
what it was.
lynching.
But genuinely,
Yeah.
she's posted pictures in the past dressed as a Confederate soldier. She sponsored bills and legislation that would dedicate one of the highways in Mississippi to a former general in the Confederacy who really loved his homeland, as she called, or loved his homeland so much he was willing to risk his life to defend it.
Yeah, it was really interesting considering she was running against Mike Espy, who has first of all, African American. Has descendants in Mississippi going back a long, long, long time, been very active in the community. We saw towards the end of the race a lot of calls for, specifically from the president, the one that everyone really liked to get hung up on was when the president said he didn't belong in Mississippi or wasn't representative of the people of Mississippi or something like that. So it's not out of line. Hasn't really been out of line with any of the rhetoric coming from this particular sect of the Republican Party in terms of let's just alienate as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And, at the end of the day, it worked for him in the Deep South. So the Republican count in the Senate is officially up to 53-47. So net, we lost 2 seats coming out of 2018.
Yeah, we did.
Which, all things considered, as far as damage control is concerned, I think we can live.
awful.
Yeah, we can live with that.
Yeah. Important things to take away from this. Espy did not run nearly as he ran far more moderately than Andrew Gillum, which I think this race related most towards with his opponent DeSantis saying some pretty fucked up racist shit during the campaign.
Yeah.
And with that, I it's way more obvious with Hyde-Smith, and people talked a lot about the Roy Moore Alabama race because he had very credible charges of
he was a pedophile,
he was
unconvicted pedophile. But I don't know. It's difficult. I think we ran into the problem, as we historically have done, of generalizing the South too much and not looking at what the nuances of each state is, which, don't get me wrong, you can make a lot of generalities in electoral politics about how people vote, but maybe this is a good signal that the Democratic strategy in the South needs to not be the Southern strategy, but be more of, okay, can we get candidates that are actually representative of their people, not ones that we think will look good to them.
And I think that, I mean, Florida and Mississippi are very different places, but Gillum ran as a liberal and Espy ran as a moderate.
Progressive liberal at that.
Yeah, Gillum was he was quite progressive on that spectrum. But what happened there was, Gillum barely lost, and Espy did very well historically speaking. Last Senate election, we ran 20 points behind the Republican.
Yeah, Trump won it in 2016. Trump won Mississippi in 2016 by 18 points.
Yeah. And
this,
so,
I think, was like a 4 or 5 point race.
Yeah, and so we really closed the margin, really closed the gap there. And especially for a special election after the midterms, that is incredible.
Right.
And so I think this is some credible evidence. And I know Brett and I, we don't like to talk about it too much, but the blue wave was a thing. And while it didn't lead to as many wins as, of course, we would want, if that was the case, we'd have a one-party system here in the United States. What it led to was Democrats historically doing way better, or doing way better historically than any other time.
And we talk about the blue wave a lot, and there's a lot of the litigation whether or not it did happen. I think in the long run, what happened was probably the best thing that could happen, because if it was just a flat-out blue wave and we did just sweepingly elect Democrats into office, I think that would have satiated a lot of our electorate, a lot of the Democrats that we were able to mobilize for this election. And the other side of that coin is we also didn't get our asses handed to us. So we probably didn't demoralize as many people. I think we found a nice sweet spot where we had some really good wins, but we also had some tough losses.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those losses have actually motivated people to say, okay, we saw that it worked in all these other places. Let's really double down on this next time, because it's only 2 years later, and let's get the ground game going early and get out there. We know what works. We know where we can improve upon. So I think, again, this is the last election that we can look at before the midterms. I think aggregate we have a lot of good stuff to take away from it.
I think so too. And I think the South will probably be the last part of the United States by which Democrats will have a hard time winning it. And I mean, historically,
we have the North.
Makes sense. It's the liberal and progressive ideas have never done well in the South, even when the Democratic Party was the South. That's how we mean. And I think, but the next battleground is the Midwest. It's where we are. And I think this actually transitions really well into something we want to talk about briefly. And that was Claire McCaskill, who did lose her Senate seat.
Former Missouri senator.
Yes. Oh, God, I hate saying that.
Yeah, it's rough.
She did an interview, and in it, she just talks about how, what her takeaways are from the 2018 election, and how largely she blames the Democratic Party failing to appeal to rural America, which is a good amount of this state. Missouri is not. I mean, it's quite populated, but it's not. It's still very rural.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, these Midwestern states, rural areas, are becoming the new battleground places for Democrats. We still have the obvious battleground states, but these rural areas, there's a way that the Republicans have been winning it for the past 20, 30 years, that the Democrats were able to win it before that. So it's refiguring out what the message is, and how to attract these voters and what kinds of things these voters actually want. So it's a soul-searching mission that I think Claire kind of ran into a wall here, but I'll be interested to hear about what she said in this interview this morning.
Yeah. Okay. So there was a couple great highlights from this interview that I'd like to mention. One of them, and this one's been we've heard the argument here about how Kavanaugh, like how Democrats voted on Kavanaugh, hurt them, and Claire says that she doesn't believe that her vote against Kavanaugh actually hurt her. She believes that more of the spectacle that occurred within Congress and the Judiciary Committee and all of this stuff that really did actually harm her abilities. Largely, this was a heavily polarizing issue, and while it's something that Brett and I have talked extensively about on the pod, it's something that really did mobilize both sides to a degree. But what it did is it gives Republicans a chance to point to something and say, hey, this is why Democrats didn't win here. But really, it was more of the spectacle, because I think that I think Claire's right here. And some other really good points. And this one, a little more contentious, but she gave a warning to House Democrats for their future investigations into the Trump administration, and how she really, really hopes that the oversight by which they are going to commit in the next session up until 2020 when they control the House is she really hopes that it doesn't take away too much from the message that the Democratic Party is trying to put out to the people.
Yeah.
Our message has been very effective, I think, especially in this past election shows that. We've been really great at mobilizing people with it, really great at actually labeling. People now know what the Democratic Party's about, or more people do.
Yeah, we stepped up the messaging quite a bit, but I don't know. I understand her wanting to do this little bit of soul searching maybe and be a little diagnostic in what happened, and I understand that. I think that's natural. I think, we've been having this conversation for a while now of what do Democrats need to do to get back in the Midwest and back in rural areas. I hesitate to nail the issue onto one topic. Like, it was all of the circus surrounding the Kavanaugh hearings. It was the oversight. It was X, Y, or Z factor. I don't know. To me, that feels like a cop-out, and especially with something like the Kavanaugh hearings, that's so extemporaneous. That's not something that you can account for. And so is the politics of what is right worth ignoring to get reelected, or should we start aspiring to have politicians who are willing to take the hit in the election to do what is politically right? And should we have ex-politicians coming out and saying, hey, I think this was wrong, without saying, but I would do it again because I felt it was right? I don't know. To me, that feels a little too much into the blame game of politics rather than the let's do what's right. Public service is a privilege, not a job.
I think that's it's very valid, and I think it's a debate by which the electorate oftentimes has, and I think that is something that the party definitely has to address, especially as now that Democrats are becoming much more of a big tent party, but having these overall messages. I think that we have to now account for the fact that we have Democrats like Sherrod Brown, who is very progressive, very outspoken, and then you have Democrats like Joe Manchin, who does not always align with the party. And while he is a very representative figure of the ideals and beliefs of West Virginians, he is not a great Democrat. And I think that is something that we have to reconcile with. Do we want people that are elected that I think both of them, the issue is that both of them, I think, do what they do because they believe it is the right thing to do.
Right.
And they are public servants through and through, and they believe that they represent their people well. And I'm not one to contest that. They do. Yeah. But I think that I don't think either of them make calculated political decisions as much as we might think that people like Joe Manchin does.
Yeah, and I can see that. My biggest thing right now is I think one of the biggest divides between the Republican and the Democratic Party is most members of the Republican caucus in D.C. are fairly similar to one another. They have similar views. They can be counted on to vote in the same way. You really have to toe certain lines in the Republican Party if you want to maintain the cash flow to your campaigns and the support. I think,
Brett, are you saying that all white males over the age of 40 are the same?
Yeah, weirdly enough, all 70-year-old white men tend to act the same. And I don't want to make the generality and say that's what the Republican Party's always been, but it's the reality they're facing today. Is a lot of it is just the politics of getting reelected. I think what the Democratic Party needs to be right now is the party that's concerned of the politics of what is right and wrong, what is hopeful and what is hurtful to the country. And if that takes the form of moderate versus very progressive Democrats, I think that's a pill we're just going to have to swallow, something we're going to have to wrangle with until the Republican Party gains its sanity back. Because someone like Joe Manchin could feasibly be a moderate Republican under a Republican Party that is less insane.
Oh, yeah.
And that might be better or worse for his constituents. But I think until we get to that point to where we have a feasible second party, the Democratic Party really has to embrace people that are going to disagree and divide against the hard progressive new wave that's coming in.
And I think the fact that the Democratic Party is really well more representative of being a big tent party than anything else. And I think that we're starting to develop our message more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to see people like Joe Manchin pushed out of the party, but
This is true.
I think that if we can win on our new message, I would rather have a Democrat that votes Democrat more than not.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not. I mean, and Joe does.
Right.
He does do that, but he doesn't do it nearly as much as I wish. Or for that matter, we've talked about him before on the pod. The Connecticut senator that voted down the public option during the
Lieberman.
Joe Lieberman, you son of a bitch.
Starts with an M is Joe Lieberman. Yeah. No, I fully stand
by. Why are
by.
all of them named Joe? Joe Donnelly, Joe Manchin, Joe Lieberman. There's too many.
Joe
of
Biden.
Joe Biden. Okay, well, he's a great man.
But
we will never forget Joe Biden. But we will sometime mistake all those other three.
Yeah. Not talking about the fact they're all also white men over the age of 70, just like the Republican candidates. But
come on.
Hey, at least we have the most diverse Congress ever.
Yeah, we do. And one more thing, and this is, I think all of our Missouri listeners can really talk about this. But Chris Koster, I think, is a good example of the consequences of a party moving too far to one side. Because Chris Koster is a very moderate Democrat.
Right.
He ran for governor of Missouri against Eric Greitens, who he then forced out of office.
Wow. Never forget. Gone, forgotten.
Anyways, so he ran a close race. Did better than Hillary Clinton in Missouri back in 2016. Was a good candidate and was a Republican up until like 2010. When the party basically, became too radicalized for him, and he was not there. He wasn't there for it.
To be fair, Eric Greitens was Democrat up until about right then.
Yeah, again, it's kind of crazy how those
strange
flipped.
foil. Yeah.
And I think that shows just some of the interesting aspects of politics, of how people that really have these morals and values and beliefs can then switch them, and
well,
run,
maybe not so much they
against each other.
switch them.
It's kind of weird.
But
I think they do. I mean, I genuinely.
I think they had different political values. I think Eric Greitens got into the Democratic Party when the Democratic Party was very much the party of Bill Clinton, and then subsequently of John Kerry, and then Barack Obama. With Bill Clinton and John Kerry, those were two people that were probably very attractive politicians to Eric Greitens. They were guys who really kind of pulled themselves up from not a lot and got through on a lot of charisma and a lot of talent, which is, Eric Greitens is a Rhodes Scholar. He was a Navy SEAL. He really didn't, he didn't come from any great wealth, but elevated himself. Barack Obama, the young star of the Democratic Party, who elevated himself to president. I'm sure that was very attractive to a man who really wanted to get going.
Mm-hmm.
But then in Missouri politics, he finds out that, I have to be very Republican to win here, and then promptly switch.
Married into some hella dark money.
Yeah. I don't think he was ever concerned with the politics of policy. He was concerned with the politics of power.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own strokes.
I just find it interesting because you also then have people like Jason Kander who pulled themselves up from a heck of a lot of not much. Were Marines and were absolutely amazing people. Anyways, Jason, we still love you. We hope you're doing well. We hope you're out there, getting better, doing great things, helping people vote, because that's what you do, and that's what you do really well.
That's
and
a man who practices the politics.
Really hope to see you again run against Roy Blunt.
Yeah.
See, there's too many Roys in office as well. Let's kick him out. Let's get some Jasons in there.
No kidding.
There we are.
So, quick blitz through the headlines this week. Good news in California earlier this week. The campfire is officially out. So that's good. Its rampage has been ceased, but bad news is there are a couple hundred either dead or missing still. Hundreds of thousands of people have lost their homes.
And have been displaced because of it.
Right. And now they're experiencing flooding up there, and it's just a whole mess. I don't really want to make it political.
But it is.
It's easy to say that this could have been prevented if we had better management and more money put into parks and wildlife preservation and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is inherently political, too, because who did we have out there fighting the fires alongside our actual volunteer and paid firemen, if not convicts who were paid $1 a day and $1 an hour for being out there, $2 a day and $1 an hour out there. I think that whole situation illuminated a lot of problems.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of different facets for a lot of people.
And I think another political aspect of it is the disaster relief by which, California is going to get is not going to be
It's gonna be nothing.
Comparable to something that Texas or Florida would get. Especially because, and you see this all the time, and it's sickening. It is sickening, because you see people on the internet that will talk about how they don't want to, the disaster relief shouldn't be funded towards millionaires who've lost their houses. But these are fucking people that have lost their houses. Their socioeconomic status doesn't exactly matter.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters. Your trauma doesn't affect you differently because you're rich.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, these people will have an easier time recuperating than if this happened in a very poor place.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there is people conflate having insurance with disaster relief, which, don't get me wrong, the millionaires will need less disaster relief because they have insurance. But to your point, people are people. Lost possessions are lost possessions.
And
it sucks for everybody.
Yeah, our government should be a little more impartial. I'm not saying that like we should evenly, fairly give out disaster relief.
No, we should fairly give out disaster
we should.
relief.
I'm sorry. We should equitably give it out.
Right.
I'm not. Yeah.
Right.
So like people like
not everyone gets a
Chris
$5,000
Hemsworth and Miley Cyrus should get the same amount of disaster relief as someone else that makes significantly less than them. Yeah.
That's FEMA, man. So
we should help everyone.
Divest all of your money away from emergency relief towards other things. But
oh my god.
Yeah, so that's another natural disaster. At least more people after that. I think it's like the new American statistic is like something ridiculous. It's like 70 or 80% of Americans believe that climate change is affecting like more chaotic natural disasters, natural events, and things like that. So
people enough credit for this.
So we're very bad at speeding through headlines, but just touching on a couple other things. Some more Missouri-related stuff. There's an article from NPR, Richard Gonzalez, yesterday. St. Louis police officers indicted in beating of an undercover colleague. So for those of you outside of Missouri, 2014 Ferguson riots were all about police brutality happening in the St. Louis area. Ferguson, Missouri is not too far outside of St. Louis proper, St. Louis County. I don't really know. Yeah, I don't know. The geography of St. Louis is confounding and confusing.
Neither of us are there.
No. But regardless, this was from the 2017 protests that a bunch of police officers beat the crap out of an undercover cop that was among the crowds. I mean, a lot of people are kind of saying, hey, this is your evidential proof that there is bias in police brutality. There are bias in people getting beat up by the police. And it's really difficult to argue that they don't have a point. I think this is one of, again, though, not to say that all police officers are bad. I think the debate gets boiled down to two really oversimplified sides, where there's no doubt there's bias against people of color in policing and things like that, and there's a lot of discrimination in it. Aspect of that we don't really talk about as much is police departments' lack of funding and lack of training and high turnover rates, and how we send out a lot of police officers who are unqualified to deal with the very stressful, high-tension situations that they're put in. And so this is an issue that has much deeper roots, partially rooted in systematic discrimination and racism, but also partially rooted in we're not spending enough resources on making sure our Justice Department and law enforcement is growing in responding to, frankly, political changes in the way that it needs to be. So,
yeah. And I think another aspect is the fact that just our justice system has failed to properly bring people, like police officers that do like target and discriminate and who have ruined lives and ruined families with
literally killed
brutality.
people.
Yeah,
literally
exactly.
killed people. Yeah.
And how we have failed to bring them to justice. And I this is, again, we're awful at speeding through things, but one thing that I think we should dive in on a future pod is how oftentimes a lot of urban programs looking at law enforcement and especially arms control oftentimes are used as means of discriminating against African Americans, especially in urban areas. And so I don't know, something we'll get into later, though.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
not this pod.
Yeah, it's going to be something that really warrants a deep dive, but since we are so bad at speeding through headlines, we're probably going to have to call it a break.
Yep. Well, one last thing. Earlier,
you have 1 minute.
I know. A couple hours ago, Alaska was hit by a 7.0 earthquake on the coast, which will probably. I mean,
by the time this comes out, either this will or will not have happened.
There's a chance of of tsunamic activities. Tsunamis?
That sounds right to me. Tsunamic
I don't know.
activity. Seismic activity related to the water.
Exactly, and then which is
activity.
a dangerous thing, and so our we really hope that things turn out
keep
okay.
Keep an eye on Alaska.
So,
all right,
and that's it.
Quick break. I'll be back with some fun stuff about Congress
Woo-woo.
and the president's son. Okay, so welcome back to the podcast, everybody.
Welcome back.
So we spent the first, I don't know, half of this podcast talking about the House and how elections are over. So a big part of the elections being over now is with our newfound majority in the House, Democrats get to take back chairmanships of committees.
Hell yeah, we do.
And we also get to vote on our leadership. We talked a couple weeks ago about the potential for Nancy Pelosi being the speaker once again.
And she was nominated.
And we did have the Democratic caucus votes on leadership. Now, to be perfectly transparent, this does not confirm her as the Speaker of the House. The full House does take a vote on it in January when session resumes. But the votes look pretty good. We had a healthy debate on what leadership should look like in the Democratic Party, and there are a lot of people that complain about Nancy Pelosi, and certainly I think there's a lot of validity to those claims. But we're going to take a look at the leadership of the rest of the committees and kind of talk about where the Democratic Party is right now in terms of its leadership and what things are concerning, but what things are also promising. So, Adam, you going to give us a run through of what the committees look like?
That I can. All right. So for everyone who is a nerd, we all know some of these names. Otherwise, you'll be learning these for the first time as well. So, Nita Lowry.
Lowy.
Oh, man. Oh, we're starting off real strong. Nita Lowry. Yeah, okay, I got that one right this time. Is going to be the chair of the Appropriations Committee.
Mm-hmm.
She'll be the first woman ever to be in charge of this committee, which is phenomenal.
Where's she from, Adam?
She is from, I believe, New York.
Yep.
Yep.
So appropriations is significant. Again, those of you who don't live and breathe in politics, appropriations is significant. The difference between Senate and the House, one of the couple of differences, all of the bills and all of the legislation relating to taxation and money and appropriations for the budget come out of the House. And the Appropriations Committee is the committee that drafts up what our yearly fiscal budgets are going to look like. And they get to decide where everything is placed. So the fact that we have, first of all, a woman ahead of the budget means that we might actually have a balanced budget for the first time since Bill Clinton. And it's an exciting time. It's a good time of change. 153 years is way too long to go without female leadership of that committee.
Yep.
So look forward to what comes out of there.
Oh, yeah. Additionally, we have Adam Smith in charge of the Armed Services Committee. He's one of the youngest people to be serving in a chairmanship position, coming in at 53. He was 31 when he first made it over to Capitol Hill. He is from
Washington.
Right. Sorry, I was like, where is this Tacoma area? Anyways.
So, Washington Democrat.
A young guy.
Veteran,
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah, moderate new member of the New Democrat Coalition. Smith has been hawkish on defense issues. Smith initially supported the Iraq War, although he later turned against President George W. Bush's handling of the conflict. On Afghanistan, Smith backed President Barack Obama's decision to pull U.S. troops out of that country, yet he'd previously supported efforts to remain engaged in the conflict. His position is going to be an interesting one to watch, all things considered, with our tenuous relationship with Russia and the war they're about to get themselves into. So I'm sure we'll be seeing his name come up from time to time.
Yes. So we have Frank Pallone, who's in charge of Energy and Commerce Committee. Amazon, you need to stop putting ads right where the article, like right where the part. He is 63. He is the son of a cop from
67.
67, whatever.
Yeah.
He's from
Old white man.
He's from New Jersey. He is, as this article calls him, hyper-educated.
Mm-hmm.
He has a law degree and a master's degree in international relations, which is quite impressive. He served since 1982 and seems to be very good. He was an essential character in crafting the Obama care legislation, which is phenomenal, and a good guy to have back in charge.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Then we have Maxine Waters herself. Oh man, she's phenomenal.
If you don't know about Maxine Waters, you should.
Where the hell have you been?
Yeah. She has deserved the title a liberal icon. She really has.
Hell yeah. She again, I think she's going to probably take a seat slightly lower than the notorious RBG in regards of influential women from this time in politics, but she's up there.
She's up there, certainly.
Oh yeah. She is in charge of the Financial Services Committee.
The last place our president wants Maxine Waters.
Oh yeah.
Is in charge of the committee that is responsible for oversight on finances.
Oh, yes. Why? Because our president is financially corrupt as hell, everybody.
And a fun fact about chairs of these committees is they have the legal authority to issue subpoenas.
Yeah, they do.
And compel people to testify before them.
Yeah, because which they do under oath, which we will get into why that is really important later.
And illegal to lie.
Looking at you, Michael Cohen.
It's illegal to lie.
So, yeah, she's awesome, and I'm sure all of you know about her.
Very progressive. Very
and
cool.
calling for Trump's removal from office.
Absolutely.
So, Benny Thompson. Homeland Security Committee. Great having another African American in charge. He is from Mississippi.
Yep.
And Brett.
Yeah. He's Benny Thompson. He's from Mississippi. He is the longest serving African American elected in Mississippi, and he is the Mississippi's House delegation only Democrat. So of all of the House members from Mississippi, I don't know how many they have. He's the only Democrat, which is really cool. That he's been able to hold on to his seat for so long. Obviously, he's doing a good job. Really sad that Mississippi is gerrymandered in such a way that they really only have one African-American representative when that state is fairly proportionally African-American. But exciting to see Thompson in this role. I believe he's been in the House for quite some time, obviously, and serving on Homeland Security. This is going to give him a lot of oversight. With ICE, with immigration, with the border,
and the detention,
things like that.
Yeah, he's going to be a vital player when it comes to those aspects.
And with TSA, so I'm going to write him a lot of angry letters. Why they're so slow?
Yes. All right, so we have another man that is near and dear to our hearts, Adam Schiff.
A lot of men.
You know, he's a cool guy. He's from California. He attended Harvard Law School.
Yeah.
He was an FBI agent for quite a while. And he's going to be in charge of the House Intelligence Committee. He's also a younger member. He's
only 58.
Only 58.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into, fam.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But he is essential, and he is an essential character in the Russia investigation.
Yes.
Because he was the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee under the corrupt weasel Devin Nunes.
Devin Nunes.
Yes. Kind of like Bobby Ninnies.
Bobby Nines. Yeah, Adam Schiff's history quite recently on the Intelligence Committee has been kind of interesting. We had the whole debacle with the different Russian intelligence memos that came out of the House Intelligence Committee. Devin Nunes wanted to release a heavily redacted, largely biased copy. Adam Schiff was offering his own. Neither really ended up being all that important in the grand scheme of things, but it kind of shows that he there's a different MO than the leading Republicans did.
And he vowed to reopen the Russia investigation in the House Intelligence Committee, which is a very good thing. Because, and this is interesting, and this is one of the reasons I wish we controlled the Senate, is because...
We'll get there.
I know, we will. In the House, House Intelligence investigation was marred with large amounts of... partisan politics, when the Senate was far more nonpartisan. There was less amounts of this rat fucking that went on by Devin Nunes because he wasn't in the Senate, and it was actually able to to find some real things and actually have people investigated and have subpoenas and all that kind of stuff. And currently, that's biting Michael Cohen in the ass right now and the rest of the Trump crime family. So it's a very good thing to see. Now we'll have at least 2 effective, investigations into Russia.
Yeah, of more oversight. To
well, this one will be an addition. I think I said 2, but Mueller is number 1 in our hearts. So,
and we'll get to that. A bunch of stuff happening with that. But we're almost through the committee.
Jerry Nadler is going to be in charge of the Judiciary Committee. He is 71 and from New York. He has a really great history of voting against the Patriot Act, co-sponsoring legislation to end racial profiling act. against minorities in law by law enforcement. He was a main sponsor of the 2009 Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which was the first major act signed by Barack Obama when he took office, and also what I'm writing my policy paper over. Additionally, on that note, he is a strong backer for gay rights, minority rights, and against police brutality.
Yeah, so we just spent some time talking about in St. Louis some of the tone that needs to be taken if we really want the Justice Department and law enforcement to head in the right direction. This is a guy who will make a legitimate effort to attempt to correct some of the wrongs that have been allowed to fester in law enforcement and in the judiciary. Yeah. So this is a very good appointment, very promising.
And sadly, this being the House, they don't have the oversight power that the Senate does in regards of being a nomination and a check on judges and that kind of thing. But a good thing that this can do is really look into the instances of the Justice Department and all of the wrongs that don't deal with Mueller.
Yeah.
And so that'll be a really good aspect of having Dems back in charge.
Yeah. Important to note that while they don't, the Judiciary Committee in the House doesn't confirm or advise and consent to executive appointments, they still have the power to subpoena these people. So if we have a just terrible judge coming before the Senate, the House can still subpoena them and ask them questions that they have to respond to. So it adds an additional degree of oversight potentially to that.
Additionally, Elijah Cummings, who is a major staple and figure in the civil rights movement, and like the Black Caucus and other really great aspects of civil rights and the advancement of African Americans all over the country, is going to be in charge of Oversight and Government Reform Committee, which is very good.
Yeah, it's a great place to put him. It's a great place to put him.
He is Trump is not a fan of him. He is from he's from Maryland, and he took over from Democrat Barbara Mikulski, who did absolutely wonderful things.
Yeah,
she was great, and also sorry, I know a lot about her recently. Thank you, policy.
Yeah, if impeachment charges or if even more high-profile arrests or indictments are made of this administration, it's going to be essential to have somebody on this House committee that's going to ensure that rules are being followed, basically.
Yeah, some really great things along with this is pushing for reform proposals of overhauling the United States Postal Service and oversight into the drug industry, which is majorly important.
A lot of oversight with that committee.
Yeah. Okay, Jim McGovern is going to be in charge of Rules Committee.
Right.
Rules is hella important because basically they set the ground rules for how things happen within the House.
It's how the game's played.
Exactly, and this is major. The Rules Committee is probably one of the most important ones in any chamber of government.
Yep.
Largely, they'll be working very closely with Pelosi once she is elected to basically set the ground rules of how things are going to operate.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they don't do it as one of my fears is that this House is going to adopt some of the principles by which the Republican Party is used to keep Democrats from having any kind of. I just hope that things are a little more fair.
Yeah, that's kind of
Ryan.
That's one of the things you can run into once you have power back. Is it's very tempting to ignore what's fair and try to balance things in your favor. Which again, I still stand by. No matter what the politics are, I think the Democratic Party should be the politics of what's right and not what's politically successful. So. We'll see. I don't know that much about Jim McGovern, but from all instances, he's someone who deserves to be there. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Next, we have Peter Defazio, who's in charge of Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. He'll be do some.
I don't know anything about him.
He said he'll do some serious oversight into the Trump International Hotel deals and that kind of stuff. He's 71, an older member. He's very progressive, though. He's a member of the Progressive Caucus. In the House, he's led stuff against free trade deals, boom and bust economic cycles, and he's a big component of workers' rights. Moving on, we have Richie Neal, who is probably in charge of the most important House committee, which is Ways and Means. And this, Brett, do you want to go into this real quick?
Yeah, so the Ways and Means Committee, I always tie it pretty closely to appropriations, but Ways and Means, where appropriations decides what goes into the budget and where money pulled from tax revenue and other places is then appropriated to the budget. Ways and Means decides basically how the taxes are made and how revenue is generated and what gets money spent on it and where money is derived from. So where appropriations is in charge of the tail end, Ways and Means is the beginning of it, of saying, okay, so we're going to tax this at this rate, that at that rate, going to tariff this, tariff that, charge this, charge that. So it is a politically essential committee to have Democratic representation on. And it's going to be something that's going to be responsible for whether or not we largely have an economic collapse here in the next couple of years of deciding who, what, when, where, why money is going to and coming from. So big thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Quickly, he's from Massachusetts. And he's an older member. He's white, as per usual. But he will be an essential player in what's to come.
So kind of to tie all of this together, what we started talking about at the top, we just got through the list of what the leadership looks like, with the exception of Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, and I'm so bad I just forgot her name. She's the chair of appropriations. Wow, that is really bad on my part. But regardless, we just elected the most diverse House caucus or House delegation in the history of Congress, and yet we still have most of our leadership positions filled by 70-year-old white men. So this speaks to people's frustrations with Nancy Pelosi largely, in that they want to see new kids taking up these positions. Kids, I say the 30 and 40 and 50-year-olds that were just elected. But trying to see new members rising to these leadership positions. And I don't take issue with that. That's a very admirable thing. I think that speaks to what we talked about 8-9 weeks ago, is that one of the biggest problems with the Democratic Party is we don't have this field team to pull from. And now I'm going to take a couple steps back from that statement, because we don't have the team to pull from. We now have that team to pull from that's in Congress, and I sincerely want them to be in leadership positions, but not at this moment in time.
Yeah.
Get them in, get them their first session under their belt, get them their 2 years.
Get them trained.
Yeah, and then we can start integrating them. We have so much to lose right now.
And Nancy talked a lot about this when she was convincing people that were initially dissenting of her, being chair again.
Right.
But largely, she did admit that in her leadership under the Democratic Party, they have not done as great a job as they should have in mentoring and creating space for those next up and coming major leaders of the party, especially in the House. And I think that this is really a very good thing, that they're that it has been admitted, and that she does not plan on staying speaker forever.
Right.
And that I think that she probably has 2 to 3 years before she feels that there's someone ready to take her place.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's a very good thing that there's been this kind of self-reflection in the Democratic Party, and that we are preparing ourselves to have effectively a long time of having a lot of really great candidates, because that's what we elected this year. And so
it's going to be an exciting thing to watch going forward from here. But now we have the groundwork laid for us. We just need to sit down and actually do the work.
Yeah, we do. Let's get our boots dirty and our hands calloused.
Absolutely. The last thing we're going to talk about for this week is the thing that I've been itching to talk about the most forever, and that's Russia. My favorite thing.
People going to jail.
Favorite thing in the world, and everyone who's going to jail. So maybe it's a little counterproductive to advertise for another podcast on your podcast, but we don't have the expertise nor the time nor the knowledge to really do a full dive into it. So I highly recommend all of you going and listening to the Pod Save America show for this week that came out either today on the 30th or yesterday on the 29th, that they sit down and actually go through everything that just happened. It's a fantastic deep dive into it, and you'll learn so much. But for those of you who said, wow, I've already committed my hour to you guys, the 36% of politics for the week, we'll do our best to kind of go through it. So this week, Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's shady personal lawyer, who recently was arrested and has been cooperating with the Mueller investigation, went before court yesterday and basically corrected a lot of statements that he made that a lot of other people from this administration have been making in terms of what the Trump administration and what the Trump corporation, is that right? The Trump Corporation?
Yeah.
The name of his business? What their ties to Russia have been. The biggest story was in 2016 when the campaign was going, and in 2015 and 2016, there was alleged to have been a meeting in Trump Tower between some Russian operatives, Donald Trump Jr., and a couple of other higher-ups. Michael Cohen was alleged to have been there. The Trump administration and the Trump team talked this back pretty harshly because, if the meeting had happened and it wasn't disclosed, if any of the things they had been talking about had happened and they weren't disclosed, they would have been in violation of a number of campaign finance laws, campaign regulatory laws, ethics laws, and acting as foreign agents who weren't registered. So it would have been a lot of problems. And so they lied about it to Congress.
That they did.
Or at least it seems like it, as what Michael Cohen's been testifying before.
And plead guilty to.
What he pled guilty to. Donald Trump Jr. has made all of the same claims, even more vehemently.
Yeah.
So what we're really looking at in the short term is Michael Cohen's about to go to jail. Donald Trump Jr. is about to go to jail. A lot of other people about to go to jail.
Some people are already in jail.
Right.
Like Papadopoulos,
Manafort,
Flynn.
Gates, Flynn. A lot of people are already in jail.
Oh, yeah.
So what this says is, first of all, Bobby Mueller is crafting a most excellent trap in which to get all these people. I don't know why all these people thought they could get away with lying to Congress. It is a crime.
Look, these people, not only have they, has the Trump family been raised with silver spoons,
right,
that have been encrusted with fake diamonds because why? There are some
We're talking about blood diamonds later.
Cheap motherfuckers. Anyways, basically though, like they just think they're above the law.
Yeah.
And it's now biting them in the ass.
All right.
Because some of the most, and I will stand by this, and I've been wanting to slip this in the whole podcast, but some of the most revolutionary words that have ever been written in history is that all men are created equal, and all men will go to jail if they break this law. Well, not all of them, but most of them will. More of them need to go to jail.
Yes.
More of them. Okay. All right. The microphone has come off the stand. It's time to get into this. Basically, what needs to happen here is that people that have committed crimes, specifically involving the Trump administration, Russia, undermining our democracy, our election,
high crimes and misdemeanors.
They need to fucking pay for this.
Conspiracies.
Why? Because it has hurt us. It has hurt everyone in this country. It has hurt the world's image. It has hurt America's image, and it will be. Oh man, it will lead to the end of civil politics for a while.
It's embarrassing.
It is,
frankly,
and it economically disadvantages the United States, and therefore economically disadvantages every one of us.
It screws up a bunch of things. The fact that we, have fallen into such a sham regime of leadership that has just been completely constructed on lies and malfeasance. And I think the kicker of all this is all the stuff we're seeing, all the things that Cohen is admitting to, all the things that we're seeing Bobby Mueller pull up, are things that we were talking about in 2016. The things that we knew about in 2016.
Yeah.
And the most disheartening part of all of this is that a lot of people are making this point. A lot of these things were, figuratively speaking, low-hanging investigative fruit that if there was any time spent by any of these outlets looking into, we probably would have known about this during the election.
Or if James Comey decided to announce the fact that he was investigating one side over the other, we might not be in this issue.
Right. And so it's frustrating because really the advent of making news about revenue and not about investigation and not about truth and not about reporting, we lost 2 years of our political lives and an infinite amount of time of political capital domestically and abroad because we were too obsessed with the Trump show to see behind the thinly veiled curtain of what was actually going on.
And I have no doubt that it's going to take 2 years, 2 to 4 years of another Democrat in office to hopefully be able to remend some of the bridges that have been blown up in the past 2 years.
We're going to need either someone excellent or we're really going to have to work at it for a while.
I mean, genuinely, I think that it's going to take the full effort of the government, the State Department, the Department of Homeland Security.
It's going to have to be a bipartisan effort, too. I think that's the biggest thing. We're going to have to eventually reach the tipping point of the modern-day Republican Party.
I think what it really will do, it will have to take a Democratic Reagan. We need someone to take every state besides the one that their opponent is from. Preferably, if we could get a Democrat and a Republican from the same state, I'd be okay with that because then we're guaranteed to win there. Basically, we need a social awakening in this country. We need people to unveil themselves from this class consciousness.
It's a good thing we only proselytize a little bit on this
Oh my
podcast.
God.
What everybody needs to do. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Brett and I are like the voice of the people, that we speak for all
the
of
voice
you.
of reason.
And yes, exactly. But sometimes we feel like that.
Right. Yeah. I think, we have these conversations because these conversations need to happen. But I think we're going to see a lot of things happen very quickly with the Mueller investigation here in the coming weeks. I'm going to say weeks, not months, but I'm going to say weeks.
Oh, man.
Because I think things are going to start coming down the pipeline.
That is ballsy right
Bobby
there.
Mueller would not start to engage his trap card until he knew everything was in place.
Yeah.
He's got that cage just about shut on him.
And I think
he knows it.
And something that we talked about Tuesday at lunch is that we need to take into consideration and make sure that we really separate these two ideas of that Bob Mueller is not a Democrat. He's not a Republican. He is an independent investigator.
Yeah.
And he will do this at the most opportune time that there possibly is.
Right.
And not the most politically opportune time.
Right.
He is going to, as Brett says, shut this cage when he knows that he can do it and it will be done effectively.
Yeah.
And that Republicans will criticize this either way.
Yeah.
We know that.
Yeah.
But we need to ensure, and he will do this, ensure that this investigation and time and effort and use of taxpayer dollars is met with real solutions and
real judicial consequences.
Real consequences.
Yeah.
He will ensure that this investigation will forever hold water and be a staple in how special investigations into presidents should forever be held.
Deepthroat Part 2.
Oh, that's a good title right there.
Deepthroat Part 2. Deepthroat Part 2. Good episode title.
All right.
So, a lot of exciting stuff. I highly encourage you to go check out PodSave for this week after you get done listening to us.
Yeah, make sure you listen to every second.
Exactly.
There's a surprise at the end.
Yeah. Okay.
So, without further ado, I believe we have exhausted our...
We've exhausted ourselves in the news for the week.
And your time.
And your time, most importantly.
So.
Oh, precious viewer.
The 36% was founded, written, and directed by Adam Childers Arnold and Brett Combs.
Music in this episode is provided by Purple Planet. You can check them out at purple-planet.com.
The presenting sponsor of the 36% is Avian Apparel.
Our audio engineering is done by Burnt Crumbs.
Our ukulele muse is Adam California.
Our cover art was done by the one and only Christian Ferguson.
Thank you so much for listening, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends. Please tell your friends.
Buy some Avian apparel.
Do that. Use the code. Get 15% off. Do your thing.
The 3-6 still works. Always will.
Again, thank you all for voting, for doing great things. Another shout out to Caitlin Burke because you're a wonderful individual, and I look forward to working with you next semester in the Capitol.
Shout outs to the post roll.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
Anyways, I'm Adam.
And I'm Brett.
And you have been listening to
the 36%. Wow, I'm glad we did that in sync.
Well, your voice is beautiful enough. It's fine.
And cut.
Leave it in.
Solid.